Imagine a time when human life was reduced to a mere battle for survival. A century so horrific it's been dubbed the worst in human history. This was the 14th century, a time that makes our current struggles seem like minor inconveniences in comparison. The 14th century was a tumultuous era, marked by profound social, political, and ecological upheaval. The world was a chessboard, and the kings and queens, the bishops and knights were locked in a relentless game of power. The common folks, the pawns in this grand game, were caught in the crossfire, their lives tossed about by the whims of their rulers and the harsh realities of the era. But it wasn't just the socio-political climate that made the 14th century a time of darkness and despair. The forces of nature were also at play, wreaking havoc in a world already on the brink of chaos. The climate was changing, and not for the better. Temperatures plummeted, crops failed, and famine loomed on the horizon, casting a long, ominous shadow over humanity. And if that wasn't enough, a shadowy specter was about to make its deadly debut. The Black Death, an epidemic of such magnitude, it would wipe out more than a third of Europe's population. It was a time of fear, of uncertainty, of desperation. People were grappling with forces beyond their control, their lives hanging by a thread, their existence reduced to a mere struggle for survival. The impact on humanity was profound, and the effects can still be felt today. The 14th century was a time of darkness, a period that tested the resilience of humanity in unimaginable ways. It was a time when survival wasn't just a goal, it was the only imperative. As we delve deeper into this era, we'll unravel the intricate tapestry of events that led to this devastation, the human stories that emerged from this darkness, and the lessons we can draw from this tumultuous chapter of our history. The 14th century was a time of darkness, a period that tested the resilience of humanity in unimaginable ways. The 14th century was a time of unprecedented hardship, and it all began with the Great Famine. This catastrophic event was not caused by war or pestilence, but by an unexpected enemy climate change. The climate turned against humanity, with relentless rain and cold that lasted for years, decimating crops and livestock. Imagine for a moment the world turning cold and wet, ruining harvest year after year. Food was scarce, prices soared, and the people of Europe found themselves trapped in a cycle of hunger and despair. The Great Famine was not confined to one region or country. It stretched from the icy shores of Scandinavia to the vineyards of Italy, from the wheat fields of France to the pastures of England. The impact on the population was profound, starvation was rampant. In some places 1 in 4 people perished, but the effects of the Great Famine were not only physical. The psychological toll was immense. People lived in constant fear of the next failed harvest, the next wave of hunger, the next loss of a loved one to starvation. The socioeconomic implications were equally staggering. As food became scarce, the price of grain shot up, pushing many into abject poverty. The social order began to break down. The rich hoarded food while the poor starved. There was unrest, rebellion, and the breakdown of social norms. People turned against each other, against their leaders, and even against their own moral codes. The Great Famine also had a profound effect on the worldview of the time. It shook faith in the church, which was seen as unable to prevent or alleviate the suffering. It led to questions about the nature of God and the purpose of life. The Great Famine was only the beginning of a century marked by widespread suffering and death. It set the stage for a series of calamities that would make the 14th century one of the most devastating periods in human history. As if the famine wasn't enough, a far more deadly force was about to descend upon humanity, the Black Death. This was not just another disease. It was a plague of epic proportions that swept across the world in the mid-14th century, wiping out an estimated 75 to 200 million lives. The origins of the Black Death are believed to lie in the arid plains of Central Asia. From there it traveled along the Silk Road, reaching Crimea by the late 1330s. It was then that it hitched a ride on the fleas infesting black rats aboard Genoese trading ships, spreading to Europe and leaving a trail of death in its wake. The plague spread quickly, ruthlessly. Its symptoms were horrifying: fever, chills, weakness, and swollen, painful lymph nodes. It was so virulent that if one person in a household fell ill, the entire family was likely to follow. The mortality rate was shockingly high, with about 2/3 of the infected tragically succumbing to the disease. The fear and panic that gripped society were palpable. People didn't understand the cause or how it spread, and they were helpless to stop it. In their fear, they turned on each other, scapegoating outsiders and those they deemed sinful or unclean. The already fragile social fabric was tearing at the seams. Economically, the Black Death had profound repercussions. With such a significant portion of the population wiped out, labor became scarce and wages rose. This led to social unrest, as the wealthy struggled to maintain control over the lower classes. The Black Death also left a lasting impact on art and culture. It forced people to confront the fragility of life and the certainty of death, themes that became prevalent in literature, music, and visual arts of the time. The Black Death left a permanent scar on human history, making the 14th century a time of unparalleled despair. But it's also a testament to human resilience, as society eventually recovered, adapted, and moved forward, forever changed by the experience. In the wake of such devastation, the world as it was known was forever changed. The aftermath of the Great Famine and the Black Death was akin to a phoenix rising from the ashes, reshaping the societal and economic landscape of the 14th century. Towns and cities once bustling with life found themselves in a state of eerie desolation. But from this ruin, a new order began to take shape. The scarcity of labor following the decimation of the population by the plague led to a shift in societal structures. The once abundant and cheap labor became a precious commodity. As a result, the feudal system, which had thrived on the exploitation of serfs, began to crumble. The laborers, aware of their newfound power, demanded better wages and living conditions. This led to a series of revolts across Europe, marking the beginning of significant social changes. The economic implications were just as seismic. With a reduced workforce, production declined, leading to an increase in the price of goods. However, the laborers' increased wages enabled them to afford these higher prices, gradually leading to an improvement in their standard of living. This economic shift also led to the rise of a new class, the bourgeoisie or the middle class, which would eventually play a crucial role in shaping future societies. The power dynamics also shifted drastically. The church, which had once held unchallenged authority, found its influence waning as it struggled to provide answers in the face of such catastrophe. This created a power vacuum, paving the way for the rise of secular authorities and the emergence of nation-states. In essence, the 14th century's trials and tribulations acted as a catalyst for a new era. The hardships endured by the people of this era led to societal, economic, and political transformations that would forever shape the course of human history. The 14th century was a turning point in human history, birthing a new world from the ashes of the old. The 14th century serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of human life and society. As we delve into the depths of this tumultuous era, we can't help but draw parallels and extract lessons applicable to our own time. The 14th century was a time of great upheaval and devastation. It was a century that bore witness to the Great Famine and the Black Death, catastrophes that brought societies to their knees and forever changed the course of human history. It was a century that showcased the worst of what nature can do, and the best of what humanity can achieve in response. The adversities of the 14th century forced societies to adapt and innovate. The dire need for solutions brought about advancements in medicine, governance, and social structures. These changes, born out of desperation and necessity, laid the foundation for the Renaissance and the Age of Enlightenment that followed. Fast forward to today, and we find ourselves facing similar challenges. Climate change, much like the erratic weather patterns of the 14th century, threatens our food security and our habitats. Pandemics, reminiscent of the Black Death, pose risks to global health and economies. The lessons of the 14th century are not just historical curiosities, they are urgent calls to action. In the face of these modern challenges, we can draw inspiration from the resilience and innovation of our forebears. They adapted, they innovated, they survived, and they laid the groundwork for a brighter future. We too can rise to our challenges. We can harness the power of science, of community, of global cooperation, to mitigate the impacts of climate change and prevent future pandemics. The 14th century, the darkest era of human history, still echoes in our world today, a testament to our resilience and our capacity to rebuild from even the most devastating of catastrophes. It is a poignant reminder that even in our darkest hours, there is always a path forward, always a chance for renewal, always hope.